Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, September 6th, 2024. I am Dave Biddle. I'll be joined by Jonah Booker in just a moment. Ohio State versus Western Michigan tomorrow night, 7:30. The game will be televised on Big Ten Network. You know, the Broncos gave Wisconsin a good game, very good game last week in Madison. So Jay Booker and I are going to get into our predictions for this game. We're going to take a look at different position groups and what our thoughts are, such as the offensive line. I want to get Jay Book's thoughts on Will Howard, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, on and on and on. Even Joe McGuire, the punter. Brandon Inniss, the punt returner. We're going to get into a bunch of stuff. Oh, and a little game called Texas at Michigan at high noon tomorrow. So a ton of stuff to get into. Before we do that, I want to let you guys know about Factor Meals. We've been telling you about them all week and at various points for the last several months. So good. It's high quality. There's no prep. It's ready in 2 minutes. Tastes great, and then no cleanup. So there you go. And we have a great deal for you. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore with Factor. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Like I said, Factor meals are ready in just 2 minutes. No shopping, no prepping, no cooking, no cleaning up. Head to factormeals.com/bucknuts50 and use code bucknuts50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code bucknuts50 at factormeals.com/bucknuts50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. All right. Let's bring in the man. Always good to see you on a Friday, Jay Book.
Happy Friday to you. How are you, sir?
Doing great, my friend. All right, we just want to cut to the chase. I have my score written down. Buckeyes are favored by 39 at last check. What is your final score prediction, sir?
56-7, Buckeyes. That's very close. 48-7.
48-7. We're again though pretty close. Pretty close.
Pretty close. Yeah, I think after hearing Ryan Day speak this week about how they need to start fast, how the Akron start wasn't good enough, wasn't up to expectations. I think they're going to definitely try to start a little bit faster here. And then the one thing that really made me happy, Dave, is what was our biggest complaint regarding Ryan Day in years past when they blew teams out? He basically sat on the football, didn't allow his quarterbacks to throw when they were up big. And that kind of, in my mind, hurt the development of Kyle McCord, some of those other quarterbacks. Because once they got in there, they basically just handed off. This time, Ryan Day talking to the media, he said no. He goes, we wanted to get in there and run our offense, especially late in the fourth quarter, and we wanted Devin Brown to score a touchdown. We wanted to go down there and score some touchdowns. So that right there tells me that, hey, they're going to try to keep the pedal to the metal if they can. So if they jump out on Western Michigan, I think there's a very good chance they can hit 50 points this week.
One of these days, we're going to have the exact same score like I think we did a couple times last year, but still pretty close. It's pretty amazing. We're always right in the same ballpark. We both have Ohio State covering. I don't think they're going to miss covering the spread 2 straight weeks. Just like you, I think they're motivated now. Western Michigan, not that they weren't motivated for the opener. You're going to get up for the opener. They just looked a little jittery early. Western Michigan giving Wisconsin all they could handle. That only helps Ohio State, you know?
Yeah, you dial in, you throw on that film, and you see a Wisconsin team that is really well coached with Luke Fickell. And Western was giving them everything that they could handle. I don't know how good Wisconsin, I think Vegas had them at 6.5 wins as far as the over-under. And they have the Miami transfer quarterback up there. So I think Wisconsin's offense is just middle of the road, your average type of Big Ten offense, but whole different animal here. The one thing that I definitely want to continue to see is the defense, keeping that rotation. I think there were 32 players on the defense that played 27 on offense. So if you can get that type of rotation, get those younger guys some reps there, that's going to be huge for their continued development.
Well, let's get to this. I wasn't going to get to this till later, but did you see the Cade Stover clip?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead.
I want to say that's why I tweeted out this morning. Do you think that Connor Stallions and or Michigan hacked into Ohio State's practice footage. Before we go on, let me ask you this, Dave. I'm not going to ask you, do you think that they did it? Do you think there is a chance or a possibility that that could have happened?
Yes, I already thought there was a possibility because of a lot of people out there, some that I trust, some that I might not, but there's a lot of smoke out there already about that. So I already would have said there's a chance. What puts it over the top is Cade Stover really broke it down. Without saying practice footage was stolen, he said, listen, we had to play we never ran before. Obviously, we practiced it that week. It was a tight end screen. Every other time he lined up in that formation all year, he's blocking. They line up in that formation. Michigan's calling out, screen, screen, screen. You got two defenders right on him, and a third one comes in. On a play they've never run before, and in that formation, he's always blocking. They're calling out screen before so that gives a ton of credence. Am I missing something? That gives a ton of credence to the idea that the Ohio State practice footage was hacked, that they had the access to somebody's account, I think is what it is. We're going to be specific. We hacked in there. When we hear they hacked in there, what the story is they apparently got the password of one of the support staff members and did it that way. But yeah, however it happened, how else would you explain what Cade Stover said?
Yeah, there's no way. Being a former college player, if it's not on film, Dave, there is no way that you come out in a formation and a situation like that and you automatically know what the play is going to be called without having prior knowledge. There's zero chance. If it's never been on tape, they've never shown it, and for them to come out, and if you watch the clip, I think the clip is actually circulating on Twitter right now.
Yeah.
If you watch the clip, you'll see the defensive line doesn't even rush. Everybody knows, as you mentioned, you got three guys basically covering Cade Stover. They don't even guard the other people on the field. If CJ would have thrown it to, I think, the backside wide receiver, he'd have been wide open or something like that. But to exactly know what was happening at that moment, you had to have had footage. I'm convinced of it, Dave, because you can't call out a formation, you can't call out a play without actually seeing it on film prior. And if Cade Stover's saying that we've never put that on film in the actual game, that right there is a huge red flag to me.
And as you mentioned, I'm glad you threw that in there because it's not just Cade saying it. There's video evidence of it. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't lie. I mean, you can go back. We can go back and watch every play if we really want to. If you're a Michigan fan, you think, they must have ran that play. Go back and look. First of all, I believe Cade Stover. There's no way he's going to lie about that. He was just a reporter asked him about it. It was a Texans reporter. I asked him about the Connor Stallions. Have you seen the Connor Stallions doc? And Cade Stover, I love Cade Stover. He's like, nah, I'm not going to watch that bullshit. Like, he's just the way he talks. I just love him. He's not a bullshitter. So when he says that, I believe him. But then there's video evidence to back it up that you have all the Michigan guys saying, screen, screen, screen. They go right over to Cade Stover.
Yeah. Speaking of it, I always ask you these questions, Dave, when I'm trying to get some knowledge. What do you think about the Michigan athletic director coming out yesterday and saying Sharon Moore's actually not even on contract? Like, how you've been covering college football for a very long time. How odd is that? We're 8 months in since this guy was hired. He's still working without a solid contract, and the AD uses a sentence. I mean, I love their AD. He's been given a lot of material over the last 2 weeks, but he says something popped up. And I take that as they got some type of notice of allegation from the NCAA, and there's a little bit more on Sharon Moore that's been anticipated, and that is hampering his contract negotiations. I truly believe that Sharon Moore could potentially be the scapegoat here for Jim, especially if they lose against Texas, USC, and then you look at Ohio State, Oregon, Washington. If they lose 4 games, they can easily make Sharon the scapegoat. But I think it's incredibly odd that a Power 5 head coach who was hired 8 months ago still doesn't have a contract. Have you seen anything like that?
Not for this long. A lot of times they'll have like an agreement in place. So somebody asks, how's he getting paid if he doesn't have a contract? They have an agreement in place, but he doesn't have a signed contract. And you could say it's a verbal agreement, a verbal contract. I'm not sure what the laws are in Michigan, but I don't know if that would hold up. Not having a signed contract, just having your verbal agreement, or even if it is like a written agreement, but not necessarily a contract. I'm not sure the legalese there, but it's very interesting. It's just like what we're talking about with the practice footage. It's like you don't have to be a genius to figure this stuff out. Why would Ward Emanuel be putting that out there? It was already reported that a couple weeks ago that he didn't have that Sherrone Moore did not have an actual contract signed. And why does Ward Emanuel need to put that out there? Because I think you're completely on point. I think he's like laying the groundwork to say, we can make Jim the scapegoat, but that's NCAA is not going to really think much about that because he's never coming back to the NCAA anyway. He's in the NFL, so we got to have one of our guys take the fall, and it's going to be Sherrone.
Yeah, and especially when the athletic director came out last week and basically said he's not falling on the sword for what other people have done that's no longer in the program. And I think the athletic director probably needs to keep it quiet here. It seems like things are starting to boil over a little bit here with a lot of his comments. He's trying to distance himself as much as possible, but he's the athletic director. All of this happened under his watch. I do think we got Mitchell here saying Texas is going to hammer T-Sun. Michigan, 7.5-point dogs, Dave, at home right now. It looks like that number is going to continue to climb. Do you think Michigan defense can keep them in the game? Because that quarterback play that they got going on right now, it looks atrocious. I don't think they have enough firepower to keep up with Texas.
I think they can keep them in the game for a while, but I'm with you. Just what you nailed it. I don't think they can keep up with them for 60 minutes. Texas just has too much firepower. If they don't break through early, they're going to break through eventually. Not that they're going to break through and just put up like a ton of points and a ton of yards, but they'll be able to move the ball eventually if they can't do it right away. They'll be able to put points on the board eventually if they can't do it right away. Michigan, man, they just look like an absolute mess. If Davis Warren is your starting quarterback, because all offseason was looking like it was going to be Alex Orji. Now you have a former walk-on who looks like a former walk-on out there. I just don't see it going well, man. 7.5 is pretty high because it opened like 4. Right. And 7.5 is pretty high. Plus you're getting the reverse hook. I don't like that. But I think Texas is going to win this game by 10 or more. I think Michigan's defense with guys like Mason Graham and Will Johnson, who are first-round locks, they'll keep them in the game. They got some good linebackers too. Got some other Kenneth Grant's a really good defensive tackle. But their offense is such a mess. Even their offensive line, which has been their strength, they're replacing 5 starters. I don't see them keeping this single digits, man.
The one thing that I'm fascinated to see, and it hasn't happened over the last several years with Michigan, is force them out of their comfort zone, which is milking the clock, running the football, and shortening the football game. If Quinn Ewers in Texas go up there, jump out on them boys, make them have to step out of their comfort zone, throw in the football to try to have to play catch up. Now you start automatically, naturally taking away that run game that they have. Donovan Edwards looks horrible.
Yeah,
he looks pretty bad. I think that they did him a he did himself a disservice not going to the NFL after that national championship run. He probably looks like a free agent type of pickup the way he's playing right now. And I think he had double-digit touches for like 27 yards or something along those lines. But yeah, if Texas jumps out on them, Dave, it could get ugly. And then they got USC this month as well. And the way USC is looking, looks like they have a competent defense. They could easily drop 2 games in the month of September. And if they do that, I wouldn't be surprised at that point when you hear Michigan all of a sudden say, hey, we're going to self-impose a bowl ban to try to ease the blow from the NCAA.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get in the 12-team playoff. I'm pretty convinced of that. We shall see. They better win this one. But I don't think they will. All right, let's get into some Ohio State topics. Where are you at with the offensive line? That's obviously the concern coming out of the first game is, the running game just wasn't dominant. I know Akron's supposed to have a good front seven. It's like, okay, great. That can't be your excuse, though. Where are you at with the offensive line and the running game, my friend?
Not good enough, to be honest. Definitely didn't play to the standards for a championship offensive line. No excuses. It's Akron. Get out there, blow somebody off the football, and open up some running lanes for your running backs. It's not that hard. Get a hat on a hat. I do think that Chip Kelly schemed up a lot of running lanes there. They had some very fascinating pin and pull action. But as far as missing guys, you saw that too frequently. If you're looking at PFF, I know some people look at it. I know Ohio State internally, they look at PFF. Some people don't look at PFF as a fan because they think it's rigged. But for conversation's sake, Josh Fryer is a senior, Dave. He graded out as a 59.1 on the right side against Akron. That's not good enough. That's blatantly not good enough. I thought Seth McLaughlin looked really good there. Austin Cereville, he started a little slow, picked it up. But the one thing that really bugged me about the offensive line, Dave, is against Akron, and Austin Cereville took 66 snaps out of 66. Josh Fryer, 62 out of 66. McLaughlin, 62 out of 66. This is the perfect time that you got to start getting that next wave of offensive linemen live reps. Because if, God forbid, if something happens where there's an injury and you throw one of these backups in there in a heat of fire in Big Ten play, you don't want them to SHIT down their leg once the moment gets too big for them, if the moment gets too big for them. So you have to be able to get these guys reps, especially these first 4 weeks, because you look at everywhere else on offense, all across the board on defense, those young guys got some live reps. You got to be able to get Fryer, McLaughlin, Cereville, who's starting, out of the game to at least get 9 to 10, 11 snaps to that second team tackles, to the second team guards, just in case there's an injury.
Yeah, Mike Schaefer. This is not quote unquote rolling guys. Yeah, that was the thing. We're going to be rolling guys. Your guys playing the entire game is not rolling guys. A guy getting 4 snaps out of 66.
Yeah,
not rolling guys. I know. It's just, it was like, it reminded me a little bit of what they said with quarterback last year going to the Indiana game. Like both guys are going to play. Devin's going to play early. I know that Indiana game was closer than they expected, and this game was closer than they expected. But it's like, seriously, you can't just like stay with the script.
Yeah. I just wanted to, because this is a critical moment, Dave, as far as the development of the offensive line. These first 4 weeks, when you look at it and say, hey, these are cupcakes, this is the perfect opportunity for guys who have never touched the field to get out there and actually get some live reps. You cannot simulate live game day reps in practice. You just can't. So if you're able to get those guys in there, and plus, Dave, this is a long season. For Josh Fryer, a guy that has played as many snaps as him, to be playing 62 out of the 66 snaps against Akron, that's a red flag. You need, regardless how you feel about Josh Fryer, you're going to need him down the stretch. You're going to need Seth down the stretch. I just don't like the rotation there. People can say, oh, they didn't play well, so they needed to gel a little bit more. Like, come on, man, it's Akron. It's Akron. Okay? Let these guys continue to get the bulk of the reps. But I will say this, Dave. They did do well in the pass blocking. And that was kind of the situation last year. They performed well in the pass blocking, but it's the run game that they continue to have issues with. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to this week. Hopefully they can get it up there. One of my bold predictions that we're going to do in the staff article is I put down there's going to be 2 100-yard rushers this week. That was my bold prediction. So I'm on the fence that, hey, they're going to get it done.
So Will week. Howard and James Peoples? I'm kidding. I think you probably mean Trey and Quinshawn. Yeah,
I got Trey and Quinshawn. I think they're both going to go for 100 this week. So now, Dave, if we come back this week and there's a situation where they're still struggling to run the ball in back-to-back weeks against MAC opponents, man.
Right, I know. And this is Western Michigan's picked 4th by Phil Steele in the MAC, when Akron was picked near the bottom. So we'll see what happens, man. I'm bullish though. I think they're going to get it going, like we talked about earlier with our predictions. For those who are just joining us,
here's the thing, Dave. People are going to look. There's going to be a few people that watch this video and say, "Hey, you guys are too negative against the offensive line." Well, I'm looking at this offensive line, and I'm going to say, when I'm watching college football, can this offensive line go and move Georgia around? We watched what that Georgia front was able to do against Clemson. If you want to win a national championship, you're going to have to be able to establish the line of scrimmage against the likes of Georgia, against the likes of Texas, who has a legitimate front. You saw Penn State. Penn State's front is littered with NFL caliber defensive linemen this year. This is Akron. We should not be having a conversation about having run game issues against Akron. So when you're looking at Georgia play, I'm looking at it as how will Ohio State match up against them? How will our offensive line match up against that front?
Got a little Phil Steele doubter in here. Phil, whatever you want to say about Phil Steele, and most people I think really love him. He is the most accurate, and he'll be the first to tell you that. But he is, like, when you're talking about like picking the conference 1 through whatever, now in the Big Ten 1 through 18, he charts it like, compared to name a publication. He's the most accurate. So he's saying not really his picks are horrible. He's the most accurate of anybody. So if his picks are horrible, then everybody else's are worse. So anyway, let's move on. All right, before I do a babble, let everybody know about Babbel and what a great way that is to learn a second language. I want to get your thoughts, Jay Book, on the Jim Tressel segment we're going to have here, punting. All offseason we talked about, is it going to be McLarty or is it going to be Veneri as the punter? So, of course, it's Joe McGuire. We had a chance to talk with Joe. I love talking to these Aussies. They're just – I like the accent. They all seem to have, like, cool personalities, too. So it was really cool getting a chance to meet Joe after practice on Wednesday. I did a story for the site. Your thoughts on Joe McGuire winning that job. And then Brandon Inniss as punt returner. I am so happy about this. I can't wait to get your thoughts on that, too. So, Jim Tressel away.
I would say, as far as the punt, it's a luxury right now that you have so many live legs there. I was hoping we were going to see Legatron, Dave. I thought we were going to see the Aussie go out there and boom one pretty much out of the stadium with that big leg. But I think there was some type of comments that he struggled a little bit in practice, and so that's why they went with the other guy. I do think that it's awesome that they have so many guys on the punt unit that's going to be able to get it down there. Hey, tip of the cap to Ryan Day. Week 1, it's only week 1, but the special teams looks night and day better since he's been involved, and they have allocated the special teams units to each individual coach so that they can specialize in it. The special teams look so much better. Brandon Inniss back there returning punts, Dave. I think he had more. I was looking at the stats. I think he's on track to have more punt return yards in the first 2 weeks, depending on how he returns against Western Michigan, than the punt return unit had the entire year under Parker Fleming. Like, just being able to flip the field is critical. It is huge for this offense, especially for an offense that's trying to find their legs or trying to build that rhythm and consistency. Being able to play with a short field is big time. I love Brandon Inniss back there. I think he really has that wiggle. I think he has the opportunity to take one to the house. He's going to get one to the house this year, Dave, one way or the other. But I love the way that the special teams look so far. Very happy about that. 2 thumbs up. And that was a big thing too, Dave. Speaking of Jim Tressel, he was directly involved with telling Ryan Day how to help fix the special teams. Remember that in the winter, in the spring?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Christopher Sowers. Tressel went in there and told Ryan Day he needs to be more involved as a head coach when it comes to special teams. And Ryan said he has spent a lot of time with those units, and you're starting to see it. You just can't treat special teams as the stepchild of the program and just kind of neglect it like they have done over the last several years, because it will come back to bite you. Ohio State fans know all too well. But Brandon Inniss, he looks good, man.
Yeah, and Rob Keys, the support staff member, I believe he's a former head coach at the University of Findlay. He's kind of the behind the scenes, almost kind of the special teams coordinator, de facto. But you're right. I mean, taking that, I love that. As soon as he mentioned that, I was like, What a perfect move that is to take a page out of Jim Tressel's book, to take his advice and do what Tressel did, because special teams were very good under Tress, and I love that. And Brian Hartline's in charge of that punt return unit, and it's night and day, like you said. Parker Fleming, nice guy, never should have been special teams coordinator here.
Right. And I will share this with the listeners before we do the commercial break. When you have ownership of a special teams unit, those guys take a significant amount of pride on those units, because the coach knows this is part of my evaluation going forward as a coach. Okay, I can be the wide receiver coach, Brian Hartline. How does my wide receiver perform? But if I can have a stellar special teams unit that's going to help this team win a national championship, those guys take a lot of pride in that, Dave. And when you're those younger kids, this is your opportunity to eat. This is your opportunity to letter at a place like Ohio State, because you worked your butt off to get on the field, to be on those special teams unit. And those meeting rooms, Dave, in the special teams, it goes crazy, man. It goes crazy because you throw in that field and they're hyping each other up. They're celebrating like, oh, you might on TV, we might see something. We might just see the end result. But when they're in the game, they're in that meeting room, they're circling like, hey, this true freshman just clobber knocked an upperclassman. And you know what? All your teammates come over and show you some love, because that's how it's done. Like, we may see the end product, but those guys are breaking it individual down to cheer those guys on. So the pride in those units is remarkable to see.
I love it. This team just seems complete. I'm going to get your thoughts on linebackers here in a moment. There's some good and maybe some not so good there, but curious to get your take on the linebackers. Before we do that, my friends, get with Babbel. 1 in 5 Americans have learn a new language on their bucket list. If that's you, make this year the year you finally check it off the list with Babbel. Fast forward to the end of this football season. We're going to be talking about Ohio State winning the national championship and all that good stuff. Think of your other goals. What can you do right now to give yourself the best chance of succeeding? If you want to learn a new language, you absolutely should get Babbel. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/bucknuts. Again, get 60% off at babbel.com/bucknuts. That's spelled BABBEL.com/bucknuts. Rules and restrictions may apply. Fantastic stuff. As we always tell you guys, Bax is now fluent in French and German because of Babbel. Now we just got to work on his English. I'm kidding, Bax. Bax is a brilliant man, engineer and trilingual. So he makes up for some of the rest of us here. Not talking about you, J Book. I'm talking about me and some of the other guys. You and Bax make us all look smarter. All right, linebacker. Arvell Reese looks like a stud, but he was supposed to be like the 4th or 5th linebacker. Sonny Styles was kind of playing out of position. They said he'd play some Mike because Cody was hurt. Up and down from Sonny, although Ryan Day had some really glowing things to say about him on Wednesday. CJ Hicks looks great when he's blitzing. Maybe he doesn't look that great otherwise. But again, Arvell Reese looked good. Great. Right. Let me say great. Gabe Powers looks good. Just your thoughts on the linebackers as a whole.
Arvell Reese probably has the highest ceiling out of all of the linebackers on the team. I think he's going to be the one that brings that linebacker silver bullets mentality back. The way he plays the game, you just have to love. He runs relentless to the football, sideline to sideline, and he brings the wood. I love him. And the fact that they gave him the helmet comms, Dave, to be able to call the defense for a guy that hasn't played it very long, that tells you the trust that they have in Arvell Reese. You mentioned CJ Hicks. Can we get this guy on the edge, Dave? I mean, it's pretty blatant at this point. I mean, he's not a 4-3 linebacker. He's a 3-4 edge guy who needs to be able to get after the quarterback. I mean, we're scared at a Baron Browning 2.0 situation again. It's very, very obvious, and I'm sure the coaches know it too. If he is allowed to go get after the quarterback, Dave, he's a double-digit sack guy. Asking him to cover in space and do some of the natural things that a linebacker is doing, it's just not his game. He's just not a fit in a 4-3 linebacker scheme or a 4-2-5, whatever you want to run. He is an edge. He's an edge guy through and through. And when he gets to the NFL, he is going right to the edge where he's going to produce. I thought Sonny was okay. He's going to get better. Gabe Powers looked good. But overall, that was the biggest question mark coming into the week or to the season, Dave, was how were the linebackers going to play? So far, I think James Laurinaitis have done a really good job getting these guys prepared. If you're just looking at the development alone of Arvell Reese from the time that James has taken over full-time linebacker coach to where he's at now, it's remarkable. But I do think Arvell Reese is going to eat into somebody's time. I don't know who it's going to be, but he's going to play even more.
I was going to ask you, like, is that because it looks like he should play? And James Laurinaitis doesn't seem like a guy that's going to mess around. He's going to play who deserves to play. He's talked about that. He's like, people ask him in the spring and even in camp, he got asked the same question multiple times. He always gave the same answer, but he wouldn't be like a jerk about it and say, you guys keep asking me the same question. I just was keeping notes like, man, this is probably the 5th time he's been asked, how many linebackers are you going to play, James? And he always says, I'm going to play as many as deserve to play. If you prove to me you deserve to play, you're going to play. If that's 2 guys, we're going to play 2 guys. If that's however many guys, that's however many guys it's going to be. So, yeah, I get the feeling if Arvell, and I don't think it was just like a flash in the pan. He just seems like he's instinctual. We know he's a big, fast, tough, athletic dude. He looks like he's just like – I like what Back said on Wednesday. It's like when Darren Lee, all of a sudden you saw – not that they're the exact same player, but all of a sudden Darren Lee was like, oh, that looks different.
Yeah, it does look very different. It looks very different, especially with him about 6'4", 237, almost 240 like that. Mm-hmm. And the one thing you have to say about Arvell Reese, he's been pretty consistent from the spring until now because his name was consistently popping up in the spring as someone who was jumping off the page, catching coaches' eyes there. He parlayed that spring into a really good fall camp. And here we are. That's now starting to be unleashed onto the field. So he's done a remarkable job staying consistent and grabbing the opportunity when give it to him. That's what you like because the depth was a major concern. Having Arvell stepping up to the point now where you're like, hey, we have to find a place for this kid to play. That's remarkable there because he is showing that you don't need to rush Cody Simon back right now. If Cody's really banged up, make sure that he's ready for the bulk of the Big Ten. Let Arvell continue to get those reps and develop, and those younger guys get those reps and develop right now. Don't rush Cody back, especially against a Western Michigan, if he doesn't need to be back.
I was going to close the show with this. Mike Schaefer on YouTube. Injury updates. Just like J-Book said, I think Cody can play tomorrow. He probably could have played last week. But are you going to risk it? And it's twofold. You're going to risk getting him more banged up. And also you get the young guys more playing time. You have the bye next week. So he buys him another week. I think the same thing with Donovan Jackson. So I don't know the answer to your question, Mike. My guess is they'll hold both guys out. But I think both guys could play if they wanted to.
Yeah. I think they could, but I don't think there's an emergency need, especially with the bye, Dave. I mean, give these guys 2 extra weeks of rest there and then start to get them back before you head into that Michigan State game to start the Big Ten play. I think the linebackers have a lot of options right now, and if they continue this ascend, Dave, they're going to be really good. Across the board. The thing is with C.J. Hicks, is everyone and their mom knows he needs to be an edge guy. The problem that they're running into is who are you going to take off the field? Are you going to take Jack Sawyer, JT off? Kenyatta Jackson look like he's getting back to what we thought he could potentially be. He graded out as the 9th best pass rusher in the entire Big Ten, the way he looked. So Kenyatta Jackson is someone. You watch Caden Curry, that scoop and score that Lathan Ransom had. Caden Curry absolutely destroyed the quarterback, and he looked like he's an absolute man-child out there as well. So when you're talking about CJ needs to get more reps on the edge, and they mentioned Mitchell Melton. Mitchell Melton looked good as well. Who are you going to take off the field? But I would challenge the coaches to say, hey, give me 5 to 10 packages somewhere to where CJ is unleashed to the quarterback. You have to be creative. Just because you have a bevy of options at the defensive end spot doesn't give you an out to say, hey, we can't be creative to unleash this talent. Because if you got a double-digit sack guy, Dave, on your roster, you have to be able to find a way to utilize his skill set one way or the other.
Great stuff as always from Jonah Booker. Thank you very much, J-Book. Thanks to all of you. Join me for our post-game show tomorrow, right after the game. Tomorrow will be a late-night version of what we learned live right after the show. So join me for that. Thanks again to J-Book. Thanks to all of you. Hope everyone has a great day. Enjoy the game tomorrow night, Bucknutters.